Okay, so we're doing a deep dive today into knife crime in the UK.
All right.
And, you've brought this really fascinating mix of sources.
Yeah.
We've got Edwin Duggan's personal story from his website and kind of his perspective on this whole thing.
Right.
And then we've got this YouTube transcript called Rise of Knife Crime in the UK that gives us a bit of a broader perspective. So I think the goal here is to kind of weave those two together to try to paint a clearer picture of what's going on.
Yeah, that sounds good.
So I think the best place to start is always with the personal story.
Okay.
So Edwin Duggan, he's a human rights advocate and an anti-knife crime campaigner.
Right.
And his website paints this really compelling picture of his life.
Right.
He grew up in an area that was hit really hard by the closure of the shot and steel works.
Yeah.
And that had just this huge ripple effect on families and communities.
And this is where you start to see, I think, those early seeds of empathy and social awareness kind of being planted for him.
Right. He saw firsthand how economic hardship can really push people to the brink.
Yeah, and it's not just that he witnessed it, he lived it.
Right.
There's a story on his website about waiting for his unemployment benefit to arrive on Christmas Eve.
Oh, wow.
Worried sick about how he was going to explain to his young daughter if it didn't come through.
Oh, gosh.
And Father Christmas couldn't visit.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking.
Oh, man, talk about a gut punch.
Yeah.
Just the anxiety of financial instability.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to provide for a family.
Right.
That's tough.
And it makes you wonder, did that experience in some way shape his later advocacy work?
Yeah.
Is there a connection there between those early struggles and his dedication to fighting for social justice?
It's a fascinating question. Did those experiences lead him to advocate for specific policies or solutions?
Yeah.
Like stronger social safety nets or programs aimed at economic revitalization.
Right.
I mean, it's worth keeping in mind as we kind of dig a little deeper.
Yeah, definitely something to keep in mind. Yeah. So in addition to the economic struggles, Duggan also had a stint in the military.
Okay.
He served in Northern Ireland in the Middle East and some other conflict zones.
Wow.
So those experiences exposed him to violence and division.
Right.
But obviously in a very different context.
Completely different.
And it sounds like it left him pretty skeptical of politicians and their ability to actually understand the realities of conflict and its impact on people.
He talks about feeling disillusioned with the systems in place, right?
Yeah. And I mean, rightfully so.
Yeah.
But, he didn't just become cynical.
Right.
He didn't just give up.
Yeah.
He took a different route.
Interesting.
So, he faced these serious setbacks in 2006.
Yeah.
Lost his family, lost his home, and lost his business.
Oh, wow.
And instead of giving up, he went back to school.
Really?
And got a law degree.
Huh. That's incredible.
That's amazing.
It's almost like he channeled that hardship and frustration into something constructive.
Yeah. And getting that law degree, it seems to have given him the tools to become a more effective advocate.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, he even ran for MP recently.
He did.
Although he didn't win.
He didn't win.
Yeah.
But even that experience probably helped to raise his profile.
Right.
And give him a platform to really talk about these issues he's passionate about.
Absolutely.
Especially knife crime.
Yeah, so it seems like he's really trying to make a difference from multiple angles.
Yeah.
Both through his own personal advocacy and by engaging with that political system.
Yeah, and trying to work within the system to change it.
Exactly.
So we've got this really compelling personal story.
Yeah.
But now let's kind of zoom out a little bit.
Okay.
And look at the bigger picture of knife crime in the UK.
Yeah.
Both Duggan's website and that YouTube video paint a pretty alarming picture.
Yeah, and it's not just anecdotal.
Right.
Like the YouTube transcript cites some pretty stark statistics.
Yeah.
It says that knife crime, especially in urban areas like London, has been on the rise. And it's particularly concerning because a lot of the victims and perpetrators are teenagers and young adults.
Yeah, that's a point that Duggan echoes on his website. And it's something that comes up repeatedly in the news.
All the time.
But what's driving this trend?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it?
It is the big question.
Yeah.
The YouTube video points to a few key factors.
Okay.
And one that really jumps out is the influence of social media.
Social media. Oh,
yeah.
Interesting.
It argues that social media platforms, even unintentionally, can end up glamorizing violence and perpetuating the cycle of victimization.
Okay, so that's where it gets kind of tricky, right?
Yeah, because social media is also this powerful tool for connection and communication.
Absolutely.
So how do you address this issue without stifling freedom of expression?
Right. It's a tough balance.
It is.
The video doesn't really offer any easy answers.
Right.
But it does raise the question of whether platforms have a responsibility to monitor and regulate content. That might be contributing to this problem.
And I'd be interested to hear Duggan's perspective on this, because he's clearly tech savvy,
right?
And he uses social media for his own advocacy.
Of course.
So I wonder how he navigates that tension.
Yeah, that's a great point. It really highlights how these issues are so interconnected and complex.
Yeah.
There's no simple solution.
No.
And even well-intentioned actions can have unintended consequences.
Right.
It's a tricky situation.
It is.
Yeah.
But, let's move beyond social media for a moment.
Okay.
Another factor that the YouTube video highlights is the complex relationship between communities and law enforcement.
Okay.
It talks about distrust, particularly in marginalized communities,
right,
and how that can really hinder effective policing.
Yeah, they use the term alienated.
Yeah.
Which I think speaks to that sense of disconnect.
Right.
And the lack of shared understanding between law enforcement and the communities they're supposed to serve.
Yeah, and this is where I think Duggan's unique perspective could be really valuable.
Okay, how so?
Well, he's experienced hardship firsthand.
Right.
But he's also someone who's chosen to work within the system.
Yeah, so he might be able to kind of bridge that gap.
Yeah.
Understand both the challenges faced by law enforcement and the frustrations felt by communities who feel over-policed and misunderstood.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point.
But, as we're seeing, this issue runs deeper than just policing.
Okay.
The YouTube video also brings up the role of economic disparities and uses Cleveland as a case study.
Okay.
It's an area that's experienced a lot of economic decline, which has been linked to rising crime rates.
And this goes back to what we were talking about earlier with Duggan's own experiences with poverty, right?
Yeah.
I mean, as opportunities dwindle and disappear, some individuals may feel like they have no choice but to turn to crime as a way to survive.
Yeah.
Which then perpetuates that cycle of poverty and violence.
Right. And it's not just about survival either, right? It's about feeling like you have a stake in society, a reason to play by the rules.
Absolutely. I mean, if you feel like you're being left behind, that the system is rigged against you, then why should you follow its rules?
That's a powerful point.
Yeah.
It makes this issue feel less about individual choices and more about these systemic failures.
Right. And that's where things get really complex.
Yeah.
Because how do you address those systemic failures?
Right.
It requires this multifaceted approach that tackles issues like poverty, inequality, and lack of opportunity.
Right. And it requires a shift in perspective, moving away from simply punishing individuals.
Right.
And towards addressing the root causes of this violence.
Absolutely.
So, which brings us back to Edwin Duggan.
Okay.
What's his approach?
Yeah, what does he focus on?
Does he focus on rehabilitation over punishment? Does he advocate for specific social programs or economic reforms?
These are all good questions.
Yeah, so let's explore that as we kind of dig into his work a little deeper.
Sounds good.
So we've got this picture of Duggan as someone deeply affected by poverty and disillusion with traditional systems. But he chooses to fight for change within those very systems.
It's like this interesting paradox.
Yeah.
He seems to believe in the potential for good, even while acknowledging the flaws and the failures.
Right. And that's reflected, I think, in his approach to tackling knife crime.
Okay.
His website isn't just about raising awareness. It's a call to action.
Okay.
He's urging people to get involved in knife crime prevention on multiple levels.
So what does that look like? What's he actually advocating for?
Well, he's got this section where you can sign a petition supporting his campaign for stricter laws around the sale of knives, for example. But he's also advocating for increased funding for youth programs and community outreach initiatives.
So it's a multi-pronged approach.
Yeah.
Tackling the issue from different angles.
Right. It's not just about, cover sentences or more police on the streets.
Yeah. He seems to understand that real change requires addressing those social and economic factors that lead individuals down this path.
It's about creating communities where young people feel supported, where they have opportunities, where violence isn't the only option.
He's trying to shift the narrative from punishment to prevention.
Yeah.
Focusing on early intervention, providing alternatives to violence.
And that's where his work to bridge the gap between communities and law enforcement becomes crucial.
Right.
You know, we talked earlier about that lack of trust.
Yeah.
How it can make it so difficult to address crime effectively.
And Duggan seems to be in this unique position to tackle that right.
Yeah.
He's been on both sides of that equation, so to speak. He's experienced hardship. He's interacted with the justice system.
Right.
But he's also chosen to work within it.
So he could be a really powerful voice for both sides, helping to build those much-needed bridges.
He's like a walking embodiment of empathy and understanding.
Yeah.
And that really resonates with his overall message, right? Which is about resilience and the possibility of transformation.
Right. Think about it. He could have easily given up.
Absolutely.
After all those setbacks he faced.
For sure.
But instead, he turned his pain into purpose.
Yeah.
Dedicating himself to helping others.
It's an inspiring message.
Yeah.
Especially for young people who are facing similar challenges.
Yeah. It shows them that even when things seem hopeless, there's a way forward.
And that's always a way forward.
And sometimes, you know, the most effective agents of change are the ones who've experienced hardship firsthand.
Right, because they understand the urgency of the problem on this visceral level.
They've been there.
Exactly.
Now, we've been focusing a lot on Edwin Duggan's story,
Yeah.
and rightfully so, but I think it's important to acknowledge that he's not alone in this fight.
Oh, absolutely not.
There are so many organizations and individuals across the UK
Yeah.
who are working tirelessly to address knife crime.
Countless, I'm sure.
Grassroots community groups, educators, social workers.
Right.
They're all playing a vital role in creating a safer future for young people.
Absolutely. And those efforts deserve our support.
They do.
Whether that's through volunteering, donating to organizations on the front lines, or simply raising awareness.
Just talking about it.
Exactly. Every little bit helps.
Yeah. And it's a reminder that this isn't just a problem for certain communities or the government to solve.
You know, it's a collective responsibility.
It is.
We all have a role to play in building a society where young people feel safe, valued, and empowered.
Where violence isn't seen as the only option.
Exactly. And I think that's what's so powerful about Edwin Duggan's story. He's not just fighting against knife crime.
Right.
He's fighting for a better future for everyone.
His story is a testament to the power of personal transformation and the ripple effect it can have.
It's a reminder that even in the face of immense challenges, individuals can make a difference.
And hope can blossom in the most unexpected places.
I love that.
Speaking of hope, I think it's time we bring you, the listener, back into the conversation.
Okay.
We've explored the complexities of this issue.
Right.
We've delved into Edwin Duggan's inspiring work.
For sure.
But now we want to hear what's resonating with you.
Yeah. What stood out to you the most?
Yeah. What questions are swirling in your mind?
What are you thinking about?
And perhaps most importantly, what role do you see yourself playing in creating those safer communities?
Right. This isn't just about these abstract concepts. It's about real lives, real choices, and the potential for real change.
Think about the connections we've drawn between Duggan's personal story and those larger systemic issues.
Yeah.
How does that inform your understanding of the problem?
That's a good question.
We've touched on a lot.
From the impact of social media to the role of economic disparity.
Right.
But what's sparking your curiosity?
Yeah.
Where do you want to delve deeper? And I know, you know, we talk about individual action, but it can feel overwhelming.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you know, what can one person really do in the face of such a massive issue?
Yeah, it's a valid feeling.
Yeah.
But, you know, even huge waves start as ripples.
Right.
Right. And those ripples, those are our conversations.
Yeah.
It's our awareness, our individual choices.
Like we were saying with Edwin Duggan.
Yeah.
Just understanding the real life stories behind the statistics.
Exactly. When we shift from seeing numbers to seeing human beings, it changes everything.
Right.
That's where empathy turns into action.
So maybe you're inspired to volunteer at a local youth center.
Right.
Donate to an organization doing this work, or even just, you know, talk to your friends and family about these issues. Those are all ripples.
Yeah.
And remember, you know, we can't just slap a bandage on the symptoms.
Yeah.
We got to address those root causes.
Right.
Poverty, inequality,
Yeah.
lack of opportunity.
It's a long game.
It is.
No doubt about it.
It's a marathon, not a sprint.
But every life changed.
Yeah.
Every community strengthened is a win.
Absolutely. And the inspiring part is that there are already so many people fighting this fight.
There are.
Edwin Duggan's just one example.
Yeah.
Think of all the educators, the social workers, the community organizers out there.
Day after day.
Yeah. their work deserves our support.
It does.
So if you're feeling that spark to get involved,
yeah,
I would encourage you to check out Edwin Duggan's website.
He's got a ton of resources there.
Yeah,
information on how to get involved.
Yeah. And even if you're not sure where to start,
right,
just visiting his site and learning more is a step.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that we're not powerless.
Right.
Each of us can be part of creating change.
You know, as we wrap up this deep dive.
Yeah. I keep thinking about something from Duggan's website that really stuck with me.
Okay.
He says, never underestimate the impact of your voice and the power of the collective.
That's powerful.
It is.
It really is.
It reminds us that even small actions, multiplied across a community, across a nation, can have a huge impact.
Absolutely.
So let's use our voices.
Yes.
Let's demand better for our communities.
Let's do it.
Let's work together to build a future where violence isn't the answer.
I'm with you on that.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
We hope it's given you a clear picture of this really complex issue.
For sure.
And maybe even spark some ideas about how you can be part of the solution.
Absolutely. Thanks for listening, everyone.